Peace be upon you and welcome to a new video. Imagine living in a building with security cameras, a reinforced door locked with a key, 24-hour security, and after all this, discovering that a criminal managed to bypass all these security measures without anyone seeing or sensing them. In the early hours of October the 17th, 2015, in an Orlando, Florida building, a girl named Sasha appeared in the surveillance camera footage of the building she lived in. What's terrifying is that just hours after these clips we're seeing, police found her body in her apartment. So what happened that night? How did the criminal get into her apartment? Before we dive deeper into Sasha's horrifying case, I'd like you to share your thoughts on the case today. Honestly, I really enjoy seeing the kind of comments where you analyze the case in detail and share your opinions on what happened and what could be the real motive behind the crime. So please share your thoughts in the comments, and let's start with today's case. The story begins in Orlando, Florida, USA. Orlando is a popular tourist city full of entertainment options, famous for its amusement parks like Disney World, as well as its restaurants, bars and cafes. It's supposed to be a very safe city. On October 16th, 2015, specifically, there was the final football match of the season between Orlando City and New York City. Everyone in the city was out to support their team, Orlando. Among these people were Sasha Samsuddin and her boyfriend, Anthony Roberts. Sasha, 27, grew up in Orlando, and after graduating from the University of Florida, she worked at a real estate company specializing in renting out apartments in Orlando. She was responsible for social media platforms, which she used to attract clients wanting to buy apartments. She was very successful in her job, always friendly, and everyone liked her. Sasha had a close group of friends, one of whom was Anthony Roberts, 28. On Friday, October 16th, 2015, Sasha and Anthony decided to go watch the match together. They first met at a bar called Amber and stayed there until around 6 p.m., then headed to the stadium to watch the match. All Orlando City fans filled the streets, and Sasha was among them, wearing the team's shirt. After enjoying the match, which their team won, they decided to go back to the Amber Bar to continue celebrating. The area they went to was full of bars and cafes open until 2 a.m. After spending some time at the Amber Bar, they went to another bar called the Attic Bar to meet Anthony's friends. At around 11:30 p.m., they met his friends, Martin, an old roommate of Anthony's, and his university friends, Jenny and Vicky. The bar was crowded, and Sasha and her friends stayed out and had fun until Sasha said she was tired and wanted to go home. She left the bar alone around 12:30 a.m. the next day, Saturday, October 17th, 2015. Sasha and Anthony were supposed to meet for breakfast, but Sasha didn't show up. Anthony was very surprised and sent her a message on her phone, but she didn't respond. Anthony thought she might have forgotten the appointment or not seen his message, but as hours passed with no sign of Sasha, it was unusual because Sasha was always active on social media and quick to reply to messages. Her friends decided to go to her apartment building. Before entering, they noticed her car was still in the garage, and they saw a gift in the car that she was supposed to take to a baby shower later that day. The gift was still in the car, as if it hadn't been touched. They went up quickly and knocked on her apartment door, but Sasha didn't answer. Fearing something might have happened to her, Anthony called the police to report her disappearance. The police arrived quickly and noticed that the apartment door was intact, no sign of forced entry. Sasha's building had security and surveillance cameras operating 24/7, and each apartment had a digital lock that required a code to open. They obtained the code from the landlord and were able to open the door. 2 officers entered the apartment cautiously, unsure of what awaited them. Initially, they felt there was no one in the apartment, but when one of them entered the bedroom, they saw hair visible from under the blanket on the bed, as if someone was wrapped in it. Gently, the officer lifted the blanket and discovered that Sasha was deceased. The officer noticed bruises around her neck, suspecting it was a murder and that the apartment was the crime scene. Investigators were called to examine the apartment and inform her family of her death, which was a shock to everyone, especially her friends who had been with her just hours before and couldn't understand how this had happened. Investigators entered Sasha's apartment and found her on the bed, partially undressed, with some of her clothes torn. The state of her clothing and the torn underwear suggested an assault. They began searching the apartment thoroughly for DNA, fingerprints, or any evidence that could lead them to the perpetrator. One of the first things they noticed was a strong smell of cleaning agents, indicating that the perpetrator had cleaned up to avoid leaving any traces. They also observed that the toilet lid was up, which was unusual for a single woman's apartment, suggesting a man might have been there. They found fingerprints on the toilet seat lid and a shoe print on the wooden floor next to her bed, but they couldn't determine if the print belonged to Sasha's shoes or the perpetrator's. They also couldn't find her phone or electronic keys for the building. Everything else in the apartment was untouched, ruling out robbery as a motive. It seemed most likely that the crime was a sexual assault. Meanwhile, Sasha was taken to the coroner's office, and the investigators focused on finding the perpetrator. Since the apartment door was intact, it meant either the perpetrator had the code to enter, or Sasha knew the person and let them in. The latter was the more likely scenario. Naturally, the first suspect was her boyfriend, Anthony, who had been with her the night before. They called Anthony in for questioning. He said the last time he saw her was at the bar around 12:30 a.m. when she decided to leave. He stayed at the bar until it closed at 2 a.m. and then walked home with his friends. His friends confirmed he had been with them all night, so he was ruled out as a suspect. The investigators wanted to know what happened between Sasha leaving the bar and arriving at her apartment, and if she might have met someone on her way home. They first spoke with the building management, which had surveillance cameras and electronic locks. They were supposed to have comprehensive security, but the criminal bypassed all of it. The security chief provided access to the footage, but it took 2 days to get it. When they reviewed the footage, they saw Sasha entering the building around 1:46 a.m. with a man with brown hair. The building's electronic entry system allowed them to know who entered when, and the man with Sasha was identified as Todd Miller, a resident of the building. Todd Miller became the main suspect. He was questioned and said he had been out with his relatives at a bar and returned to find Sasha and 2 other girls at the building entrance. He opened the door for them, and Sasha was the only one who entered with him while the other girls left. Todd said Sasha was very drunk and he didn't see her again after she entered the building. He was asked if he left his apartment again, and he said no. Security footage confirmed Sasha wandered through the building, appearing disoriented, possibly due to intoxication. The footage didn't show her entering her apartment or the time she entered. It was estimated she entered around 2:45 a.m. because she didn't appear in the footage again after that time. They didn't find her phone, but did find her iPad on the bedside table. It was linked to her iPhone, and they were able to access data from the iPad. The last message sent from her phone was at 5:12 a.m. to someone named Ben, with just his name in the message. Investigators wanted to speak with Ben. Ben explained that they were old friends from school and had been in a relationship during college but remained friends afterward. He received the message at 5:12 a.m. and replied 16 minutes later, but she didn't respond. Ben confirmed he hadn't been to her apartment recently and his DNA and fingerprints didn't match the evidence from Sasha's apartment. He was cleared as a suspect. The case was puzzling. Every lead seemed to lead nowhere, and it seemed someone had entered the building without appearing on surveillance cameras. A neighbor of Sasha's, who lived on the 4th floor, recalled seeing Sasha that night between 2 and 3 a.m. and noticed security guard Stephen Dexbury following her. The neighbor saw Sasha walk by while Stephen was in the laundry room but didn't say anything to him. Stephen was one of the last people to see Sasha and was re-interviewed. He had claimed he finished his shift at 6 a.m., but footage showed him leaving the building at around 6:39 a.m. with garbage bags, which was unusual for his duties. The bags matched those found in Sasha's apartment. After a second interrogation, Stephen's story remained consistent, but he failed a lie detector test. They obtained a search warrant for his apartment and found shoes that matched the prints found in Sasha's apartment, and discovered he had deleted data from his phone. Specialists were able to recover the deleted data, which revealed Stephen had searched for information on a specific type of electronic lock, the same type used in Sasha's building. He had researched how to open this type of lock without a key, and had tried to access information related to the lock. Stephen's story began to crumble as more evidence emerged. They found traces of Sasha's DNA on Stephen's shoes and, combined with his lies and the inconsistencies in his story, he became the prime suspect. He was arrested and charged with Sasha's murder. The investigation revealed Stephen had planned the crime for some time, knowing the building's security system and how to bypass it. Sasha's murder was a shocking case, especially in a city like Orlando. The investigation concluded that Stephen Dexbury had used his position to access the building and commit the crime. Despite his initial denial, he eventually confessed to the murder. The case highlighted the importance of thorough background checks and maintaining rigorous security measures to prevent such crimes. It also showed how critical it is to trust in the safety of our communities, even in places that seem secure. And that is the end of story. Goodbye. Thank you.